easy. Okay, you have to practice these. Okay, number 1 hint. The most powerful tool for handling objections. I don't know why I put number 1 hint up there. Apparently I need to update the PowerPoint. Okay, so the most powerful tool for handling objections, which actually, let me finish. I know I started a sentence. So practice makes perfect. You have to expect objections. I don't know why, but for some reason, every time I get to the end, for a long time, if someone had an objection, I'd be surprised. I'm like, I know how to sell. I know the sales process. I followed the sales process. Why are you objecting? This is ridiculous. Okay, it's just a habit. It's just a habit. Expect them to pop up. And it took me a long time to understand it wasn't a reflection of how I ran the sale. It was just a habit. So number 1 hint. The number 1 hint I can give you guys for handling objections is to use scripts. Those of you who've sat through a class with me before probably have an idea of who this guy is, but anyone out there know who this guy is? Okay. And Matt Bomber. He plays a character called Neil Caffrey on a show called White Collar. Now, this was my favorite TV show back when I was in sales. And I used to watch this, and this guy, okay, now, by looking at this picture, how many of you guys can pick up on the fact that this is a con man who actually just got out of prison? And he's living in New York on $500 a month stipend, wearing a Prada suit. This is a guy who gets everything he wants, right? He's living in a rooftop terrace garden overlooking Madison Square Garden. He gets to drink Italian roast every morning with breakfast. I mean, $500 a month in New York doesn't go that far. Okay? And yet somehow he's pulled all this stuff off. And I used to look at Neil, and Neil, the character's name is Neil. And Neil, when he would say up front, he would talk to his partner, he'd be like, yeah, the sale. We've got to go for the long sale. We've got to get. So I knew that he considered himself a salesman. And I would always look at Matt or Neil, and I would always sigh. And not just because his eyes are so blue. I would sigh because, I know, right? Sigh because I'd be sitting there going, wow, if only I could be as good as Neil Caffrey at closing deals, because he always gets what he wants out of this. And then I had this sudden realization. Some of you guys may have come to this a little quicker than I did. He's got a script writer who not just writes his lines, but also writes the lines of the person he's talking to. So of course it always goes Neil's way. But then I realized something else. When I got into sales training, I realized, you know what? We've got script writers too. And the thing is, people respond in predictable ways. Think about your favorite funny movie. How many times have you seen that movie? 5, 6, 10 times? Okay. One of my favorite ones is The Princess Bride. I always bring this one up because usually a large enough smattering of the audience has heard it that when I say marriage is what brings us together today. Usually there's little chuckles, like people are going, yep, I remember, that's the old Pope, and he's, it's a funny moment, okay? See, people respond in predictable ways, and it doesn't matter how many times I watch that movie, every time I see Billy, whatever his name, I can't remember his last name now, but every time I see him on screen going marriage, it's funny. Every single time. So people respond the same way, even though I've heard it before. So when you find something that works for you, just like your funny movie, use it again and again with your prospects, because it will work for them as well. So everything I'm about to teach you guys, for the most part, is scripting. And there's 2 keys to scripting. We already talked about one, but the first one is you have to write your scripts down. Big key here. If you do not write your scripts down, you are setting yourself up for failure. See, we retain the things we write down. That's why I love it when I see people out here scribbling notes, because I know that regardless of whether or not you actively try to implement anything you learned from me today, you'll still retain some of it. You'll still try and use some of it, because when you write something down, you own it. So when you write something down, write your objection handling responses down, you own it. But more than that, when you write it down, we're very visual. Humans in general are very visual. And so you will start to be able to adjust and correct your scripts and strengthen them when you see them written down. So many times I have people who try and argue with me on this one. You guys have no idea how many times they're like, it's all in my head stuff, I don't need to write it down. I've got it. I'm like, okay, well do me a favor, try and write it down anyhow. And you know, as soon as they try and write it down, they suddenly can't remember what they say. Problem is, if you can't remember what you say, you don't own it. You need to be able to write your script down. Now you can improve it. Now you can practice it. But until you can, you're really setting yourself up to make your life so much harder than it needs to be. So 1, write your scripts down. 2, practice. Okay? I've got a chick with a mirror up here because how many of you guys have a business partner? Okay, a couple. How many of you guys have at least a mirror in your house? Okay, so what I recommend you do is you go to the mirror and you talk into the mirror and deliver your script to the mirror, and it looks really stupid. I get it. But here's the thing. If I just try practicing my scripts just to myself, I'm not used to making eye contact while I have to deliver my script. See, if I practice in the mirror, I'm used to making eye contact, and now I get to see if my brow furrows and I get all tight in the lips, and now I can start to see and improve. But if I don't practice, and if I don't practice in a mirror, I mean, the best option would be to practice with someone else. Have a business partner, have a coworker that you could go practice your scripts with, because they can give you direct feedback. But if you don't, at least practice in the mirror. So let's talk about some actual techniques. By the way, there are only, anyone want to make, before we go into that, wild guesses, how many objections do you think there are? Comment, how many, if we classified them, how many common objections do you guys think there are? 10. 10? 5. 7 to 12 is the average, but I know there's 3 that pretty much everybody gets. 7 to 12 is the average in any industry. And then there's 3 that almost everything can be classified into. Timing. I want time to think about it. Now's not the right time. I need to talk to a business partner, spouse. Or it's too expensive.
Or what?
Huh?
I'm sorry.
So the 3. First one is it's not the right time. I need time to think about it. It's a timing thing, right? Second one is I need to talk to a partner. I need to talk to a spouse. Third one is it's too expensive. Too expensive, I'm going to go with someone cheaper. Of these 3, all 3 of them are fake. Okay, very, very seldomly do you actually get someone where money's an actual issue. Very, very seldomly do you actually get someone who needs to think about it, who needs to talk to their business partner. Most of the time, these are what we call stall techniques, because people want to be nice. Maybe you did a good job building trust and rapport and they don't want to be mean. They don't want to let you know that, well, we already hired someone last night, or my cousin's going to do our design for us. They don't want to let you know that, well, you know, we're already signed up with 3 other apps and we don't want to sign up with yours too. Because they like you. So they're trying to be nice. Because we as human beings in general, for the most part, not the people on the road, but when you're not driving, everyone else tries to be nice. So we come up with these objections. And I remember this one time. It was back when I was relatively new to sales. And I had to sit down with the lady. It went really well. Okay, we get to the end. And at this time, I was selling online marketing for businesses. So we get to the end. And we're chatting. And I'm like, so do you want to move forward? And she goes, well, I need to talk to my business partner. And I'm like, ugh. That was like the kiss of death for me. I didn't know what to say. When you said I need to talk to my business partner, like I always assumed, okay, they actually need to talk to their business partner. So for me, I was like, all right, well, I guess just, I mean, you know, when are you going to talk to your business partner? Great, I'll call you back next week. You know, I just went through the whole routine. And it was a Friday night. It was late. Or it wasn't a Friday night, but it was like a Thursday night. It was late. I hadn't made quota yet that week. It was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And I was like, okay, if I can like stall for another half hour, I don't have to go back to the office. So I sit there and I'm chatting with her, and we're just chatting, and we were getting along. I mean, we were having a lot of fun, getting along great, just chatting, having a cool conversation. And finally, it hits about 4:30, 4:45, and I'm like, well, I should really get going. Just let me know when you have the chance to talk to your business partner. And she blushes. She goes, can I tell you something? I said, sure. She goes, don't judge me. Now, every time you hear don't judge me, what do you do immediately?
Start judging.
I'm like, of course. She goes, my business partner is my cat.
Oh.
It gets better. I go, what? She goes, yeah, when we filed the paperwork for the LLC, I wanted an excuse so that I didn't have to make decisions on whether or not I wanted to buy right away. So I put his name down as the managing partner for my LLC. I don't even remember what happened after that point. I was like, is this serious? Like, that's the kind of story you can't even make up. It just reinforces the point. Whenever someone says, I need to talk to my business partner, it's too expensive, I need time to think about it, often these are what we call faux or fake objections. They're not real. What you should be hearing is, I need more information. And I'm going to go get it from Google instead of you. Now let me ask you this. Does Google carry 100% accurate information?
No.
No, not so much. There's a lot of really bad information on Google, especially when it comes to specialized industries. I have an ongoing client, I do sales training with them, it's a plumber. And it's like one of their banes where people will show up with an article and they're like, well, I found this on Google. And the plumber's like, it was written by a handyman, not a master plumber. Like, seriously, he wants you to duct tape this shut. That doesn't work for plumbing, okay? But the problem is that when they're telling you, well, I need to think about it. Well, I need to talk to my business partner. It's too expensive. So when you hear the first two, I need to think about it, I need to talk to my business partner, what you really should be hearing is I do not have enough information, okay? The third one, it's too expensive. What they're telling you is, that's not worth what I'm getting. You want me to pay you $1,000? That's not worth it for what you're offering me, in my mind. Now you have to realize something here. Couple of things. Either they just need to be educated, which we'll talk about as one of the techniques in a minute here, as to why they need to adjust how they're thinking. Or you may have someone who is so radically different from you in their view of the value of money, you may not be able to bridge that gap. If they're really arguing, now never assume that it's the second one. Always assume that they just need more information. Because they're not being sold, they're sitting here saying, what you're offering me is not worth what I'm about to start paying, what you're trying to get me to pay you. That's what you hear. So, first technique I like to use is called solve the problem. Solve the problem. This one's pretty easy to understand, right? What's their problem? Fix it. This is when they're sitting here saying, well, I don't get paid till Friday, so I couldn't pay you till Friday. Okay, no problem. Let's go ahead and sign the agreement today, and we'll get the credit card all lined up, and then I'll just set it up to run automatically on Friday. No big deal, right? So whatever their objection is, whatever their problem is, solve it. Especially if you know it's a useless problem if they're stalling. Oh, well, I don't get paid till Friday. Okay, not a big deal. We wouldn't be able to run the card before Friday anyhow. So not a big deal. Let's go ahead and get you set up anyhow. This is also great when they're sitting here saying, well, our contract doesn't end, or, this doesn't, or they start to come up with excuses, right? And you know what your common objections are. You know what the ones you get all the time are. The more you work in your industry, the more you'll start to realize, and the more you'll realize if you start to write down all the objections you get from people, you're going to start to realize all the objections fall into 7 to 12 main categories. Pretty basic. I've had people all the time who are like, well, Stephanie, I get people all the time who tell me that they can't afford it till they get paid on Friday. I'm like, that's a money issue. That's the money objection. Money, time, partner, spouse, right? Those are the three main objections, and then you can subclassify the rest of them. But for the most part, when people try and get all clever and, oh, well, my industry is so special. I'm sorry, not really. Okay, you are special, but your industry is not. Okay, there are only 7 to 12 common objections. I have never found an industry that has more. If there are more, I can always find how 2 of them are the same thing, just worded differently. Okay? So, first one is solve the problem. They presented you with an issue. Okay, let me solve that for you. Second one is isolation. Okay, we talked about, obviously, how people give fake objections, right? My business partner's my cat. Really? Okay, people come up with fake objections all the time. So your job is to isolate the objection they've given you. Make sure, before you start solving the problem, like let's say, for example, right, Kayla, you said your app is, they have to do like 10% or 20% discount, right? So let's say they're sitting here and they're saying, oh, well, that's way too big of a discount. We're not going to be able to give that big of a discount. Okay, well, is that the true issue? How do you know? So you had to sit there before you start saying, okay, well, let's wait, let's do a 5%, or before you start messing with anything, before you start solving the problem, make sure it's the right problem to solve. Wouldn't that suck to spend a half hour trying to solve their problem and then realize they didn't really give 2 figs? Make sure it's the right one. So, great way to do this one is just to ask them, okay, I think we might be able to take care of this one, but let's also look into, let's see if there's any other questions you have. Do you have any other questions? Do you have any other concerns? What I would refrain from is using this phrasing. Is there anything else holding you back from moving forward today?
Why would you not use that?
Because it is a very classic sales phrase. People are recognizing it as very salesy, and here's what I have found. Every time I've used it, you know what the answer I've gotten is? Oh no, just that problem. And then as soon as I solve the problem, suddenly there's another one, and then there's another one. So people just don't tend to give you the straight answer. So what I typically, instead of saying, is there anything else holding you back from moving forward today? See, people still feel like now you're trying to close me again. You're trying to aggressively close. If you want to use it, go for it. In my experience, working with as many people as I have, it's not gone over well. So what I recommend is, do you have any other questions or any other concerns? What else is, there's usually something else nagging at the back of people's minds right now. What is that thing that, you know, look, I completely understand, even if you're almost embarrassed to tell me, you wouldn't believe the stuff I've heard, please feel free to tell me this. And honestly, guys, you have no idea how many times people are not sharing details with you because they are embarrassed. It is remarkable. They're embarrassed, like she was embarrassed, it was her cat, okay? She liked me, but she was embarrassed it was her cat. I don't know if she's ever told anybody else that. But you have to make sure before you start going out of your way, bending over backwards, killing yourself to handle their objection, make sure it's the right one. So what else is concerning you about moving forward? Especially if it's price. If they're giving you a price objection, there's almost always something else going on. So isolate. Another one is to tell a story. This one's fun. Stories do a couple of different things, which is really, really phenomenal. And I always recommend know your stories in advance. I know too many people who try and wing the story and then it doesn't come out strong. Okay, but stories are a great way to handle objections for a couple of reasons. If I'm telling you a story about my client, or about a former client, or about a prospect who chose not to move forward with us and then regretted it, if I'm telling you a story, it does 2 things. One, it suspends time. How many of you guys have ever sat through a movie, and then all of a sudden you look at the clock and you're like, wow, that was a 3-hour movie? Because you were enjoying yourself. You didn't notice 3 hours of your life just got sucked into the TV screen. Time, the more time you can spend with your prospect, the more likely you are to close the sale. So, storytelling suspends time. It's a great way to get more time with your prospect without turning it into an argument or without looking desperate or clingy. It gives you the chance to spend 5 minutes with them and they're engaged in what you're telling them. if you've done the right story. If you're sitting there winging it and going, so, well, we had a client who was, let me pull up her name and her number real quick, so I can tell you about her, because, please don't do that, okay? That's just not gonna be exciting, and trust me, you're not suspending time at that point. You are very much making them aware of every second that's passing. The second thing that telling stories does is it adds credibility. See, I'm telling you a story about my client. And whether or not you want to sit there and say, oh, well, you're only going to tell me the good stories, the truth of the matter is, at least I had a story to tell you. And I am adding credibility, regardless of whether or not some people will believe you at a much higher level and others will not. Some people like to sit there and say, well, you're only going to tell me the stories of the people that it worked out for. Tell me a story for someone it didn't. And then you go, well, there aren't any. And they go, liar, right? And now you're fighting again, and that's just a bad thing. But have a credible story, okay? Question?
No, I was going to add to that. The area of the brain is called Broca's brain, in response to storytelling, which is why human mythology has been with us so long, and we continue telling ourselves mythology even in the modern society. It's called Broca's brain.
That's cool. Would you write it down? I'd love to do more, because, I mean, storytelling is great. We love stories.
Well, you know, like in the Star Wars, in the galaxy far, far,
Far,
away.
right. Yep.
It's all BS.
It is, right? But we get pulled in, and they've done all kinds of studies, right? Watching a show, watching a movie, and experiencing something. Like, if you watch the car accident in the right, like if you get set up the right way, your body reacts the same way to as if you actually went through the accident. Your brain has a lot of power telling these stories, and I know, and the reason I'm going on about this one is because, again, I've had people who walked up and said, Stephanie, I don't tell stories because no one's going to believe me. Because when a salesperson tells me a story, all I'm sitting there thinking is, you're only telling me the stories of the people that it worked for. Okay, great, but you know what? Whether or not you realize it in some part of your brain, you're registering with that story, and you're going to remember the story, not everything else. We pick up on stories. Yeah.
And I believe it's you who has a storytelling class coming up.
I think
it's
so.
with you. Yeah.
Probably, yeah, I do
Yeah,
have
I
a.
just signed up.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I have a storytelling class coming up. I forgot about that. Cool. Go sign up for that one too. And if that is me, then, which it probably is, but if that is me, then we'll talk about how to construct your stories, the 3 types of stories you should be telling, when to use your stories inside your sales pitch. So it's actually a pretty fun class to do. Okay, but I highly, highly recommend using stories to handle objections. Next technique, ask questions. This is kind of like going into the isolation, but the way I try and describe this one to people is, let's say you've hit like a brick wall, okay? You got there and they're like, you know what, we're not moving forward today. And you're like, okay. Well, instead of just standing up and walking out of the door and leaving it on a sour note, right? You guys have heard, obviously, right? You don't go to bed angry because you wake up. So when I worked with horses as I was a kid, worked with them for a long, long time, and whenever we would go riding, they would always say, don't leave the barns on a sour note, because whatever you come back to the next time, you and your horse will be just as upset with each other, right? So every time we left, I was not allowed to throw him in his stall and be all mad at him. I had to pet him and hug him even if I was furious. Okay, so same thing. When you get back to your prospect, they're going to be furious too, right? Or they're going to have the same sour taste in their mouth. So using these questions does 2 things. 1, it helps eliminate that kind of sour taste in their mouth. 2, it redirects the conversation. So for example, I had an Aveda rep come and talk to me. She goes, Stephanie, I'll walk into salons all the time trying to get them to carry our line, and before I can even say anything, they straight up tell me we're not interested, we've got all the products we want. She was like, what do you do? Like, I've hit an objection before I can even start to talk to them. And I said, start asking questions. Have a series of questions planned that's going to lead them over here, and before you know it, you've come around the wall from a different angle. So I said, why not ask them, well, who do you guys currently carry? What is it that you love most about what they do? How did you get set up with them? How long have you carried them? How did the owner make that decision? What do you like about them? What's one thing that you would like to see improved about it? What's one area you feel that they're weak in? look, that was like 6, 7 questions. By the time they answer that, it's gonna take at least 10 minutes to get through all those questions. And you know what? She came back to me and said, you know what's funny, Steph? As soon as I started doing that, they started telling me about the challenges, the areas they would love to see another material, and we were able to get our product into the salons. See, people think they know what they need. We talked about that earlier. People buy what they think they need, but sometimes they don't know what they need, and you have to help them figure that out. So what I recommend is a series of questions that helps them see why their current objection is really not as valid as they thought it was, without making them feel like an idiot. Because trust me, as soon as you try and show them how smart you are and how dumb they are, you're out. You've got it. These questions, it's kind of like a little like crawl through the bushes, subvert way to help them realize that they had this preconceived notion that was incorrect. We're not moving forward today. I completely understand that. You said you didn't want to move forward today because your lease isn't up until the end of next month, right? And you want to wait until you're a bit closer to that. Absolutely. I totally get that. Have you thought about what's going to happen as you get closer to the end of the lease? Well, what do you mean? Well, have you thought about, like, if things going to get hectic around here, what's going to happen inside the business? Are you going to end up losing business days over this move? Well, yeah, we've already planned to lose 5 business days for the move. Okay, right. So you already planned to lose 5 business days for the move. Now, as you get closer to that move, tell me a little bit about what you're planning what your structure is to get that set up. And so now they start to tell you, well, this is what we're going to do to set up the move. And now I'm getting all sorts of additional information that I need to go back and say, okay, well, this is why it fits in now. You're saying that you don't want to do anything right this instant because you want to wait until you get closer. But the truth of the matter is you need to get the movers ready to go now so they can come in and move you out right away. They thought they knew what they needed. They thought they didn't need anything till next month. The truth of the matter is they didn't know what they needed. So having a series of questions that kind of helps them realize that their original objection was not correct is a great technique. Whenever you get those objections that you know are ill-educated and you want them to come to that conclusion on their own. Another one that I love to use is reduce the risk. There is always risk when someone wants to buy from you. There is always risk when someone goes to buy from you. I could conceivably hand you my money and you could disappear, right? Or I could spend a whole bunch of time. Let's say you don't require to be paid up front. You're on the back end. You're paying me on the back end type of person. Okay, what if I spend all this time getting you all this information and then you run off with it? What if? There's all sorts of things that could go wrong. There is risk. Anytime I'm bringing on a partner, anytime I'm bringing on somebody, there's a chance I could get totally and completely messed over. Your job is to help them realize why there is very little risk in working with you. So they say, well, we haven't decided. We're not sure if you're the company we want to move forward with. We've got 3 bids on the table. Okay, great example. We've got 3 bids on the table. We'll let you know. Okay, let me give you a handful of reasons why working with me has absolutely no risk for you. Let me reduce the risk for why you should put yourself on our app. Let me reduce the risk for why you should use our company as opposed to anyone else for your medical scrubs. So this is another fun one. I also love to do educate. I think we're almost done. We've got 2 more. Okay, so educate them. How many of you guys think you know more about your industry than your prospect does? All right, everyone else is busy writing. Okay, we all know more about our industry than our prospect does, right? That's our job. We're the expert. We're supposed to know more than our prospect does. They need you to be the educator for them. If you've heard any of my classes, you guys know I'm a huge proponent of sell from a place of education. Sell from a place of helping them learn and grow. But it's so important to give them the opportunity to realize why you're the person to trust. They've got a fake objection. They've got an objection you know is not legitimate. Educate them as to why it's not. Let's say you want to take the direct approach. Instead of asking questions to show them why their objection is silly, you just want to straight up say, okay, if that's your big concern, here's all the reasons why you actually are thinking on the wrong train of thought. Here's the key. Again, you can't make them feel stupid. As soon as you make them feel stupid, game over. I love using educate in conjunction with asking questions, because asking questions helps them realize there's a flaw in their reasoning. And then it gives me the chance to be the educator. Instead of just jumping right in saying, well, I'm going to teach you a thing or two. It gives me the chance to do it on a more friendly basis. Okay, and this is my favorite one, just because it's hilarious. Be unreasonable. Be unreasonable. When I was relatively new at doing one-on-one business coaching, my coach told me, he said, because I would get people all the time, oh, Stephanie, it's too expensive. Oh, it's too expensive. And I was like, I'm getting really frustrated with these people, telling me it's too expensive. And my coach goes, well, here's what I want you to say, Steph. When someone says it's too expensive, I want you to ask them if they're sitting, here's how the conversation's going to go. So here's John talking to me. He says, so Stephanie, are you sitting at your desk right now? I'm like, yeah. He goes, are you sitting on a chair of any variety? Yes. Is there a computer on your desk? Yes. Is there a bookshelf maybe with some books on it in your office? Yes. Okay, so what I want you to do, Steph, I want you to, last question, I'm sorry. Do you have a car by chance? Okay, awesome. So what I want you to do is I want you to take everything in your office, load it into your car, and take it down to the nearest pawn shop. Go ahead and pawn it so you can pay my fee for the first month, because I'm going to teach you how to get all that back. Okay, so every time my coach would say this, I'd be like, are you freaking kidding me? No! Like, I'm not going to tell people to go pawn their stuff to work with me. But the concept behind being reasonable works really well. You want to know how I know it works? Because there's 3 major companies out there saying, I'll buy out your contract.
Cell phones.
Right? You got to switch to me. I'll buy out your contract. Let me be unreasonable about this. Okay? Let me do something that no one else would do. And I have, by the way, I had one lady, she wouldn't let me off the phone. She was like, I want to work with you, but I can't afford it. I want to work with you, I can't afford it. And I was like, well, honey, like the only other option is for you to go find something and pawn it. She goes, okay. So it does work. But here's the thing, you have to watch your attitude with it. Right? If I walk up to you and I'm like, look, I know you want to work with me, just pawn something. Doesn't someone want to hit me at that point? I don't want to hit me at this point. Okay, it has to be, make it playful, make it fun. Let them know, hey, well, you know what? Why don't you just sign up anyhow, and then you can let your business partner know later, and it's always easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? Okay, again, here's my caveat. Make sure it's inside your personality, and make sure you do it from a place of fun. Instead of sitting there and actually trying to get them in trouble, because you will get yourself thrown out. If you do that to the wrong person with the wrong attitude, they will throw you out of their job, okay, or their house, or wherever you happen to be. But if you can do it with the right attitude, if you can make it fun, when you're unreasonable, make your unreasonable request. This is an idea. Have you guys ever heard of a book called Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini? No? So in Influence, he talks about the retreat from the cell. He goes, you ask for, hey, can I borrow $10? And you're like, no, you can't borrow $10. You say, okay, well, can I borrow 5 instead? And you're like, yeah, whatever, here you go. Okay? Right? The Girl Scout says, hey, do you want to buy 5 boxes of cookies? And you're like, no. And she goes, well, do you want to buy 1 instead? And you go, okay, fine, right? Even if you're like, I'm on a diet, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm not supposed to eat Girl Scout cookies right now. Okay? But they ask for a big sale, and then when they ask for a smaller sale, we're much more likely to go for it. So be unreasonable. Ask for, you know what? Well, you know what? Since you've got to think it over anyhow, let's go for the $10,000 package. Let's just go ahead, let's get it set up, and they're sitting here going, I wouldn't buy a $3,000 package. What do you mean buy the $10,000 package? And then you say, well, okay, let's back up then. Let's just look at that $3,000 package, but let's get it going today. Go to the far end. Go to the end of, being unreasonable with them, as long as you can have fun with it. So, how much time do we have now? I think we have plenty of time. We got 30 minutes, so here's what we're gonna do. If you flip over your sheet of paper onto the back side, you will see you have the spots to write down 3 of your top objections. And so here's what we're gonna do. Very quickly, I want you guys to listen closely, follow directions very closely here, because someone always goes off and tries to do it their own way and then gets lost. So, write down where it says objection number 1. Just write down your objection. Go ahead and ignore the second 2 areas. Then go to number 2, write down the second objection. Ignore the second 2 areas. And then write down the third objection. Go ahead and take care of that real quick for me. Once you have all 3 of your objections written down, just go ahead and look up so I know I can start gauging if the room is done. Otherwise, I just stand up here thinking everyone's done or thinking everyone's still working and everyone's waiting for me to give the next instruction. People still writing here, so we'll give them just a second more. So while they are finishing up writing those down, I'll talk super slowly so they have time. But what I'd like you to do now that everyone's done, okay, is where it says write down best technique to handle this. For each one, look at the other side of your sheet and grab the 1 or 2, right? Because I said you could use these techniques in conjunction with each other. I said ask questions and educate, right? You could also be unreasonable and then educate. So there are all sorts of things you can do as far as using multiple techniques to handle each objection. So go ahead and pick which technique you think will work best to handle these objections. Keeping in mind that if you're dealing with a false objection or a faux objection, oftentimes isolating the problem, asking questions, you need to get beyond that. So choosing to solve the problem is probably not going to be your best option. So go ahead and pick your 3 or 6 objection handling techniques for each objection, or not for each, but 1 to 2 objection handling techniques for each objection. And then again, as you get those done, just look up so I can gauge where we're at. still means they need more information. So they're poorly, especially, I mean, you know when people aren't truly ready to move forward, right? So for example, I do business coaching, and every so often I'm working with someone who's like, oh, well, Stephanie, we're not fully staffed right now. Like, I'm still running 3 roles that I'm not supposed to be working in. Well, and so they're like, so let's move forward after I get fully staffed, after we bring on these last 3 people I need to fill these roles. That's a true time, like, for me, that's fine. I don't wanna start working with you while you're still trying to work 4 jobs instead of just 1. So that's an actual true timing issue. And then what I do is work through, I'll ask questions and work through when they expect to have those 3 people in place. So usually timing is a faux objection, though, so you need to get to the bottom of that. Occasionally, like I said, every so often you're gonna have someone that's gonna be a true objection. Like, you know, like I had one lady once who like went and pulled up her phone, logged into her bank account and said, see, I don't have enough money to pay you. I was like, okay, all right, got it. So there is no money in the bank, okay, totally understand, okay? Sometimes it's real, most of the time it's not. So once you have your objection handling techniques written out, then you've got space, and what I'd like you to do is start working through your scripts. What are you gonna say? What are the questions you're gonna ask? What's your response? How are you gonna educate them in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid? And start working through your 3 objection handling responses. I'm gonna give you about 7 minutes to work on that, by the way. we're done and you look around the room and it looks like someone else is done too, feel free to scoot over, sit next to them, swap sheets of paper, and you're gonna start role playing. So they'll give you the objection and then you give them the response, if you're done. And then please be conscious other people are still working, so. So just hand the other person your paper and so you'll give her the objection and then you give her the response you wrote down.
Are we grading papers?
Well, only momentarily. You're gonna get your paper back.
I didn't know we were gonna exchange it, so.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So you'll give him your objection, his objection, and then David will give you the answer he wrote down. So it's a chance to kind of play it back and forth. And if you need to look at your sheet, kind of cheat, figure out what it was you wrote, that's okay.
Oh, okay.
So as you finish up, go ahead and look around the room and find someone else who is also finished up. I was gonna say, Kayla, if you turn around, it looks like we got.
I guess I'll do yours first, since yours is written up. I was writing my notes for me, I didn't know what we were gonna do.
I think we have some of the same objectives, yeah.
I don't get paid until next week.
Yeah.
I don't have money right now. Now you have to solve the problem.
Okay,
If you're
yeah,
still working on writing your
that's
script
great.
down, just 2 more minutes,
Are we
please,
going to
just so you
set
have
this
time to
up
practice.
so that when you get paid, you can go ahead and go forward with this? Or I can show you how to free up some money so that you can afford it right now.
Okay, you wanna give me?
And then, you have the same thing, sort of, I don't, it's not in our budget right now, it's too
Okay,
expensive.
and then my answer, isolation. How would you use it if you had the budget for it? And I do that simply so they can entertain the idea of kind of like spending money that they don't have and what value I can bring to it. Okay, and then, what if I did something on spec to prove it's worth it? So I'm a photographer, so I'll tell somebody, okay, you do operate the business such and such. What if I take a picture of this and you use it in your next ad? No charge.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be like, great. And the photo speaks for itself, so, you know, what they sold on it the next time, they'll pay me.
Yeah.
Okay? I've got to talk to my spouse, significant other.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, and I'm gonna cheat it on this one because we don't even, when we talk to set up the appointment, we always say, is there someone else that's gonna be involved in the decision?
Right, you're trying to get to the decision.
We don't even set up an appointment unless they're both gonna be there. If we show up and they say, oh, I'm sorry, my wife had to work today, we go, fine, great, can we go ahead and set this appointment up for, for rescheduling? But we don't even, because we know.
What kind of work
all
do you
the
do?
time. I'm sorry?
What kind of work do you do?
Financial planning.
Okay.
And it takes both people. You know, nobody's gonna, husband's not gonna sit down with me and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
He's
you're
gonna have to
doing
run
it.
it by my wife.
That's a partnership.
Yeah,
You have to have
exactly.
a partnership.
Exactly, it's not even a point.
Yeah, I used to
That was really cheap on that
I used to
one.
sell advertising, so, you know, getting past the gatekeepers and getting to the decision makers was crucial. Otherwise, you'll waste your time.
What do you do? It sounds like construction.
I'm a photographer, but I've done a lot, I've worked in a lot of different.
You do what?
I'm a
Welcome to give
photographer,
your
Oh,
partner
okay.
feedback too, right? If you think there's a better way they could do it, you're welcome to
Okay,
share that with them.
let's see the next one. Oh, wait a minute, you're supposed to answer.
Yeah, we have another company we use.
You two not work together?
Okay, what do they do for you and how much do they charge you? The things I wanted to find out. So then that way I could get an angle to try to undersell the other person. to be able to let them know what specialty or value that I might have that the other person might not have, but they may need.
Maybe some experience stuff.
I can do this for the okay. A lot of times, they'll say, I'll ask them, how quick is their turnover? Since I'm a one-man operation, I can turn things around very quickly. It costs me a lot in time and labor, but money-wise, it doesn't. So I'm able to undercut other people that, will take a lot longer to do things. Okay, do I really need this? This is your question.
Yeah, do I really need this? In our business, we tell story, and these are true stories.
Well, I'm sure there's
And we go both ways, We had a client, okay, and we're just talking about life insurance in these two stories. One guy signed with us, 42 years old, $300,000. He had no insurance before. Took out a $300,000 policy. He and his wife on each other. And then before the policy even was approved by the company, he passed away of a brain aneurysm. Okay? The company goes ahead like he's still alive, and they approve the thing, and so we walked over with a check for $300,000. They paid us like $98.
This is a tangent, but how long does that usually take for them to get the check?
To get the check?
Yeah,
6
family.
weeks.
Okay.
And like funeral homes and places like that, they know that time limit, so they don't like bug people. And the other one was a guy came in, he and his wife both came in, talked to us. Yes, we need to go ahead with this, but I don't get paid till next week. But he did go ahead, and he did the same thing. I don't remember what. I think they were in a car accident, and he died. She's okay, but he died, and no.
So two things. You're letting them know that tomorrow's not promised to anyone.
Exactly.
And you love your family, and you want to make sure they're well taken care of. Absolutely. So they have a meaning. You're just establishing their needs.
And it's like, how many barbecue plates have you seen?
Oh, I'm trying to
bury them. You can
This
bury
is so
them, but
you
you can bury them, but then you're gonna not live in your house
No,
anymore
but this,
because you don't have any income.
this is for two ways they can rest in peace. You can rest in peace and your family can bury you. You can rest in peace and rest assured that your family is taken care of. See, I'm already selling it.
All right, and did you address already that we don't need a photographer?
No, that's different than we have. We don't need one because of your competition.
Okay, yeah.
And this is that we don't need one. So basically what I would do is I start asking questions about, and I used to sell advertising like this, asking questions about how their business operates. And once they start telling me how it operates, I'll generally come across a lot of different issues they have with running the business, especially small businesses. So then at that point, I would try to figure out how I could solve their problems with my service. That's it. Thank you very much. What's your name?
What's Sabrina?
David. Nice to meet you.
David?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. What she did on I got to help my spouse. We don't even set an appointment. We have appointments. We do, history. We do financial planning. What husband is going to sit down without his wife and make all the financial decisions? And they go back and say, honey, this is what I did.
A husband that's going to be a divorcee.
That's a short-term relationship right there. We show up at the door, even with an appointment, we show up at the door and they go, oh, I'm sorry, my wife got called into work. Well, okay, we need to reschedule. We don't know.
It just ends up being
Just frustrated twice. Yeah. Or they're gonna go, well, this is what they said, and the spouse is gonna go, no. So then they call up and go, well, she said no. You didn't understand.
Yeah, because if you give them your spiel and the spouse messes it all up.
Yeah, exactly. Labor Day already, oh my gosh. My schedule, I've got starting classes at one of the Alamo College, in addition to all the other classes. And I'm like, I'm not ready, my classes are not
Two more minutes, start wrapping up.
David, you have a card?
You know, I think I only have a digital card.
I'm gonna give you mine. Did you say you were a photographer, right?
You know, after the class ends,
One of my daughters is she does events. She does weddings and she's a baker, a cake decorator.
yeah,
She does a lot of weddings and quinceañeras and things like that. Is
yeah,
that what you're talking
I've done
about,
that
those
too.
kind of things?
Yeah, I've done everything from commercial to regular.
I can give your card to her.
Okay,
She ever has
as
to
soon
do
as
about-
the class is done,
All
because I'm
right,
recording.
last 30 seconds here, or wrap it up, wrap it up. Try and give people like plenty of heads up, otherwise I'll be like, well, we only got through one person. I'm like, wait, you had 10 minutes, how'd you only get through one person? Alright, so here's what I would recommend. If you really enjoyed working with your partner, make sure you turn around or turn to your right or to your left to get their business card, and you can always come back to this. I highly recommend having someone you can go get lunch with once a month and go through this stuff, because let's be totally honest. This is not going to happen by accident. You're not going to wake up one morning and go, I am the best objection handler in the world now. I would love it if it worked that way, but it doesn't. See, I've talked about this. Some of you guys who've been coming to the past few classes, you know I've got on this hitch here, okay? Everything I teach is a verb. You guys remember what a verb is back from, primary school? It's an action. It's a thing you do. You have to actively go do this. This is not something just sitting in class is going to make you great. Okay, I do all sorts of little things to try and help out, like making you write your scripts and practice them in class. So I do something to help, but let's be totally honest. It's not quite the same practicing here as it is when you're in front of the prospects. See, when I was getting ready for my second degree black belt, when I was getting ready for my first degree black belt test, they told us, Stephanie, you have to realize something. A black belt test is 8 hours long. It's a full day of martial arts. When you get past that first hour, maybe 2 hours, the only thing that's going to carry you are your habits.